Very good.
His brother is Coach K here on campus, but we're really pleased to have him with us here today. George originally came to school here at BYU Hawaii back in the late 70s, and he also performed at the PCC for at least a year and a half in the Hawaiian section, so he's well acquainted with what happens here at BYU Hawaii. He then got his degree at BYU Provo in 1985, graduated in finance and accounting, and then he worked for, with Fidelity Investments for a while. But where he's joined us from today is he joined Merrill Lynch back in 1999 and is the director here at the Merrill Lynch in Hawaii since '05. They've been recognized as one of the top U.S. offices for all of Merrill Lynch. George has also had a lot of extensive volunteer work. He's worked with various organizations, including the Boy Scouts of America, the Heart Association, the Symphony, one of the securities organizations here. His wife, Manal, and he has 4 children. A couple have been at BYU Provo, and one's on a mission right now. So we're really glad to have George here with us. We're excited for what he can share with us, his insights. Let me just remind everybody, there's a little mistake that was in the brochure originally, or in the catalog, that this class goes to 11:50. It actually goes till noon, so we encourage you to stay here up to that time as we end the lecture with some questions and answers. But that does go up until noon, so thank you very much. George, let's welcome him.
Thank you, Richard. You'll be glad to know that BYU is not the only one that has technology problems. If anybody has a BlackBerry, the world has been without emails in the last couple of days. For those who depend on them, have trying to get work done. It's been difficult the last couple of days. Grateful to be here. Sister Cummings, Lay Cummings, asked me to come and share some ideas and thoughts with you about what most of you are probably here about today. And I know you guys use these websites, and the wonderful thing about technology today is you can find up just about anything about anybody and anything. And so I went to Wikipedia and said, what's an entrepreneur? And an entrepreneur is someone who launches either a new enterprise or business, but accepts the full responsibility for that enterprise or for that business. Now that's a difference between a couple of ways that you can go in your life. An entrepreneur is somebody, again, if you start out, and you're going to have the responsibility for whether it fails or whether it succeeds. Unlike other professions and jobs in your life that you can go and work from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or whatever the careers may be. But when you decide to come up with an idea and say, you know, I have a great idea and I want to go out and find my way in the world, there's a little bit of risk in that. And I want to share with you some of the things that I found through the last 25 years or so that I've been involved in the securities industry that I think are important for you to know and understand. First of all, I think you should know what made me decide to get into the securities business. You may or may not know Merrill Lynch is an investment firm, and while I've been there for the last 11 or 12 years, I've been in the securities industry all my life. And how I decided to get into that may be helpful to you as you think about where you may want to go and what you may want to do with your careers, regardless of what you're studying right now. I was a junior year at BYU, and I was studying finance, and I began to look ahead. I was married at the time and had a child, and I was thinking about what am I going to do? It's like, I'm going to graduate in a year, and it's like, what do I do with a finance degree? Have you ever thought about that? It's like you're studying a lot of things, and it's like, what do you do with that? And what do you do with the minor in accounting? So I started looking around different places, and I talked to a few organizations, talked to some banks and other firms, IBM and a bunch of firms like that. And as I talked with them, they had really nice offices. And I thought, well, this is kind of cool. I'd like to have an office like this someday. And as I spoke with them, I said, well, you know, I remember talking to some bankers, and I hope I don't offend anybody when I say this. Hope nobody's in banking, but ask us some questions about him. I said, how long you been doing this? And so after 25 years, many of them 25, 30 years, they've been there. I said, so when you're 25 or 30 years in the business, what do you get? So it's like, well, I'm a vice president. They had really nice offices, kind of like this. And I said, well, kind of, can you tell me, not your salary, but what does a person make, you know, that's been a branch manager for a bank after 25 years? And I won't share that number to you, but it was fairly low. Actually, in 1985, it was about $50,000. Now, that may sound like a lot of money to you, especially when you're not like earning nothing. But I thought to myself, I didn't want to be in a position, as I interviewed a bunch of other people, I thought, and this is important for you to realize about yourself, it doesn't make it better or worse, right? It doesn't mean a person's good or bad, it's different, depending on what career you choose. I decided I didn't want to be subject to the politics of the corporate world. I didn't want to be subject, I didn't go into the military because I didn't want to be subject to those above me. I didn't want to be subject to being promoted because of somebody else or being related to somebody, or somebody was going to promote me along the way. I knew something about myself. I grew up on a farm. In spite of my last name, actually, I was born in New Jersey and grew up on a farm. And I knew something about myself, that I could outwork anybody. And I knew I'd be more persistent. That's just kind of life I had. I knew if I went head to head with somebody, I could outwork them and beat them just because, not the brightest person in the world, but I knew I could work harder than them and rise above all the issues that might be out there. So I knew I would work hard. And I knew if I was persistent and I could get ahead. So I just decided to choose a career that there was no limitation. There was no ceiling on the amount of money that I could make. Now, I'll tell you, the people that work for me today, a lot of them make $500,000 a year. Now, that's a lot of money. Now, you don't get there day one, and I'll share some things along the way that you need to be aware of as you kind of, especially for many of you, kind of getting close to graduation. But it started out like this. When you're an entrepreneur or you're going out things and you're going to risk failure or success, oftentimes you're going to start in a position where there's not a whole lot of people, especially when you're trying to get an idea or a thought started, trying to start a small business, whatever that may be. It's a challenge, right? You're like this person here in the lemonade stand who you're selling the lemonade on the street corner, trying to pass out your literature and your information and trying to get people to just listen to you, to give you an opportunity to show what you can do. And I would tell you, brothers and sisters, it's one of the hardest things. This career can be one of the hardest things that you'll ever do in your life. But I always tell people that work for me, just remember when you see the person at the top of the hill, he didn't fall there, right? He had to climb one step at a time. When you look at athletics or anybody, you look at Steve Jobs, and I think all of you probably saw all this stuff when he passed away, and just in seconds after he passed away, it was around the world, right? Everybody knew within instantaneous when he died, but he didn't start there. There's a great book, if you've never read before, by Malcolm Gladwell. If you haven't read it, I suggest you read it. It's called Outliers. It's a very interesting book that talks about why some of the people like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and all those were successful. It's a really interesting book. You ought to take the time. It's an easy read, but I'd suggest you read it. But when you're starting out in your career, it's very hard work. And we'll talk about some of the things that make a difference to you along the way. But first thing that I think is really important that I will share with you that I learned early in my career. I got out and I went into the financial services industry. I thought, okay, I'm smart. I got this career. I'm going to go out and save the world and invest the world, and I'm better than everybody. And you just kind of go out and you don't have really a plan. And now I would tell you that I'll stand up here and tell you that you need to have a plan. You need to have a vision when you're starting a career, whatever it is. You have to have the end in mind. What is it that you want to do? What does the end look like? Or what are you trying to accomplish? Or what's your business? Or what is your thought? In my line of business, it was financial service. And so I had to have some vision of who I wanted to work with, how much money I wanted to make, and how much assets I wanted to have under management. For me, that was $100 million of money under management would get to me to the $1 million in production. At that point, I'd make $500,000 a year. That's just the way the numbers work. But I wouldn't have got there if I didn't know what the end game was, right? So I needed to know I wanted $100 million to manage with clients. And then the entrepreneurial side of you has to figure that out. That's what the entrepreneur spirit is. It's like I see a need. I see what I want to be, and then how do I figure out how to get there? And that's what entrepreneurialism is all about. And that's what separates those who just, stand on a street corner watching the paint dry on the street, and those who really achieve some significant things in their life. Now, it doesn't make the person on the street corner watching the paint drying a bad person, right? That's what they choose to do. But if you want to accomplish whatever it is in life, you have to sit down and put down a plan. So that plan, just like this blueprint is here, is you figure out what that vision is, and then you have to back into it. And sometimes you may need to talk to people about whatever it is that you're trying to achieve, but you have to do some research and talk to people. In my case, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and then I had to figure out if I needed $100 million under management, and I wanted to do it in 10 years, so I needed to grow at $10 million a year. How many people did I need to see, or how was I going to get people to listen to me? I was 23, 24 years old, just like you, all of you, right? People that had a lot of money, and how was I going to figure out, just a young kid, to get people to invest with me? And that's where you got to figure out is the marketing side. You figure out now today you got technology and a lot of incredible things to help you. But your role then becomes how to figure out how you're going to get to where you need to get. Sometimes you have professors here at school, but there's others in the community that will help you do that. But the major reason I see a lot of people in life, whatever it's the financial services, whatever, they never do this. Everybody tells you to do it, but nobody does. More people spend more time planning their next trip, the next vacation, and how they're going to get there and what they're going to do than they will planning out their life. But if you don't plan, the chances of you getting to where you want to be are probably pretty slim. So, and it's got to be something that you live by, right? You got to write it down and figure out what those steps are, and then you monitor it. And it's got to be flexible and along the way, so that it's just not something that will be there and you put it in the drawer and it collects dust. Let me just kind of stop along the way, and I've got a bunch of other things I'll share with you, but if there are questions about anything, just in careers, and we'll kind of get to the end and we'll have some questions, but as we're going along, raise your hand. I want this to kind of be interactive, and anything's fair. I'll be very direct and blunt with you because I think it's important for you as you think about where you're going to go in the career, not to make the mistakes that I made. And I'm sharing you some of the mistakes that I made. When I started out in the career, I didn't have a plan. I just went out and started talking to people. I started walking to people. I didn't really know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what kind of clients I want. I give you a great example. I recently hired a young lady who's a doctor. And you may think she's a doctor. She went to medical school. She's now working for you. So yes, she's wanted all her life to work in the financial services field. But let me tell you a little bit about her and why she's going to be extremely successful. Number one, she's a doctor, so she knows many of the physicians in Hawaii. So when you're thinking about who am I going to market to, who am I going to grow my business to, it's one of the things you've got to think about is who am I after, right? Who am I going to market this business to? Who's my niche? Who's my natural market to? The niche that I'm going to go after. So she's got doctors as one of them. Number two, she's Korean. So she's got also another opportunity there to work with people, wealthy and Korean people that live in Hawaii. She's also retired from the military, so now she can work with all the colonels and generals and all the people that have money that in the military. And she's also very involved in the arts and the ballet and the symphony and things. And so people that associate in that market are very wealthy people. They're the ones that keep the symphony and the ballet going. So now she's got 4 areas that she has a natural market to or a natural affinity to go after. And so part of your plan is you got to decide who is it that you're trying to build a business for? What is the target markets that you're looking for? And then you can execute on it. It's important also to have a process. You may think, well, why is he showing me these pictures? Well, I think people learn a little bit more visually. You think, well, what's Do you all know what this is, right? United Airlines, do you remember the captain was who flew this? Anybody know who his name was? Anybody remember? I know you got iPhones, you're probably sitting back there figuring out, okay, US Air, look it up. Captain Scully, maybe you didn't see this happen. Some of the older people in the crowd will probably figure this out. But you know what saved the pilot and all the people that are standing on the wings of this plane? Back in right before World War II, that's how far this goes back, that ended up saving all of these people. During the war, the United States was making B-17 bombers, and the pilots kept on crashing them. And they couldn't figure out why there were so many crashes of B-17s, and the whole program was about to be scrapped because they kept on, too many of them were crashing, so they thought, well, this isn't going to work, and they were going to move on until somebody did a little analysis, and you know what they came up with? A very simple thing. They came up with a thing called a checklist. And they found out what happened was, as pilots were going up, they forgot to do a couple things with their flaps that was causing the planes to do a nosedive and go into the ground that they weren't used to maneuvering on a plane that big. So when Captain Sully was taking his plane off, and they went through that flock of geese, and the engine stopped, what saved these, not only just his skill and experience, was the fact that he turned to his co-pilot and he says, where's the emergency procedures checklist? And they went line by line down that checklist of things they needed to do to prepare for an emergency crash in the water. And that's the result. So the lesson learned is sometimes we try to think in our minds, we try to keep it up here. It's like, oh, you're young. Trust me, when you get my age, you got too many things like up there and you can't remember any of it. So checklists become more and more important to you. But I'd suggest early in your life, as you start thinking about your careers in business, that's very important that you become efficient. And you got to have processes for things, because you'll get so busy running your business and your practice that when you start doing things, there's some things that you don't want to have to think about because there's too many other important things to think about. Like in my practice, I know I got to contact clients 12 times a year. We have 4 portfolio reviews, and we sit down face-to-face twice a year. That's something I don't want to have to worry about, so how do I do it? I use technology, and I set it up on a monthly basis, and then it comes up and it tells me, okay, you need to talk to Mr. Lee today and on a certain day of the month, and it's there, right? I don't have to worry about it because I have other important things that I'm thinking about. So as you think about running a successful business, you got to have a process of things, not just a plan, but a process. Third thing, embracing change. Now, I was talking to Brother Tanner earlier about how the world's changed so much, and when I was in college back in the 70s and early 80s, life was much different then. I can't imagine what the next 25 years are going to be like for all of you. It's kind of exciting in some respects, but this wasn't that long ago. Now, you may think that was a long time ago. The 70s seem far for you, but they don't for me. It seems like yesterday. But this was kind of like the technology. There was the rotary phone. There wasn't any iPhones, right? There wasn't any of this kind of stuff. That, and instantaneous, you can text people, and some of you are probably texting people sitting here today, right? You can just communicate. People get emails, find out what's going on around the world instantaneously. But in the old days, it was the old rotary dial. And today, the cell phone. Well, in the computer thing here, I couldn't find a better picture of me when I was back there, but it wasn't until my junior year in college that we had IBM, the green screens. You probably even don't know what those are. It was Lotus 1, 2, 3 and Word Perfect. And it was a screen, green, ugly screen. You could do some projections and financial things on it, but mostly we had to program and fix it ourselves. Well, today, when we do business and my financial advisors go out in the world, they take iPads with them, and they can load presentations right on them, and they can show graphs and charts and stocks and instantaneously information at their fingertips. So what's the point of that is, when you're thinking about whatever it is, the business that you're thinking about, you got to think about the globalization of the world. You're not just competing against people here in Hawaii, but you're competing with people around the world. And the world's getting smaller and smaller and more competitive. The business world is the athletic events for adults. You know, we all, depending on our size and shapes and speed and heights, may not be great athletes. We may never make it in the NFL or the NBA or major leagues. And so those who aren't fortunate enough to do that, we go into the business world or some other world, and we compete day to day, every day, against others around the world and how good we can be at whatever it is that we choose in our life's career or passion that we have. And where you are today, I guarantee it's not going to be the same 10, 20, 30 years from now. And so you have to find a way to compete in that, and you have to be able to change along with it. And some people just don't. And those who don't change along the way, they go out of business. You may think of some businesses that have recently gone out of business. Can anybody think of one? What was that? Borders, yes. Who did them in? Right, you have it all online now, right? The iPad, right? You can get your books right online. Don't need to go and pick one up. No, I still like buying books, so I have to go to Amazon and buy my books. What else? What other businesses have you known that just didn't change with the time? There's another great one, right? Who did them in? Netflix, and now Netflix is a little bit in trouble. It speeds up soon, right? Cable's going to come right into your house. Who else? So explain a little bit. General Motors. A lot of General Motors was the answer. So you think about General Motors, now think about BMW on the other side of that. What's the difference? What's the different experience over Toyota? Why are they still competitive? And you think about the differences in what they've changed, the experience in the cars and management, all these things. You have to be constantly reevaluating your plan, but you have to have a place to start from. And you have to know what you're doing. And then I will tell you, you have to, I tell you, there's just no easy way, brothers and sisters, is you have to know what's going on in the world every day. I read several newspapers all the time. I read the Wall Street Journal. I read the Advertiser on a daily basis. Sundays, I get the Barron's. I know what's going on around the world. And I read the New York Times. There's not too much that goes around the world that I can't talk to you about. And, you hear at a college campus, and I tell you, as you start going out and getting your first jobs, there's a few things that, to be competitive in the world, you have to know what's going on in the world and what differentiates you from the next person that's going to apply for a job, whatever it is, whatever career you choose to do. You got to have some reason why I would want to hire you versus the next person that's going to walk through the door. When I started in the business, you see this bottom thing, you may think that's like a measuring tape that you would put around your waist, and they kind of figure out how, what your waist height is. That's how we used to trade stocks. It was on a ticker tape. That's how it came across, and that's how we made decisions many, many years ago. Now today, information, just think about that. We went from a little piece of paper, and then what's on that piece of paper are stock prices. We went from that to the picture on the right is, anybody recognize what that is? Any of you business majors? CNBC, right? CNBC runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And now what used to be an industry where I had some kind of inside information for people, where I knew what the earnings were going to be for a company, say IBM or some other company, and I could call up a client and say, hey, we think this company is going to be a good one for the following reasons. Now today, clients know that before I do. Right? They know it before you ever get it, because it's all right there in front of them. And the news is just so instantaneous that how do you stay ahead of that? And our business has changed just from the standpoint of just calling on stocks to being more solving people's estate and financial planning needs and helping them achieve their hopes and their dreams. That can't ever be replaced by a computer, because it takes experience and knowledge to weather through and come up with solutions that computers typically can't come up, because it's very personal. So this is the world. So you think about the next 20, 25 years of your life. I don't know what we're going to be on by then, but I don't know, maybe we'll be beaming ourselves around the country, and the technology will be cool enough that we can do that, like Star Trek. But there's going to be opportunities. And the challenge that all of you have is you got to figure out where the world's going and where the opportunities are, and where you may, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint, figure out where you may be able to make a difference in the world and create something that may be of use to others. Another thing I learned along the way is attitude, not aptitude, determines altitude. John A. Whitsoe, you may have heard of him in church history, but I believe this. I tell you that I can see it a mile away when somebody that works for me, their attitude starts getting negative, they're done. You just might as well quit, because attitude is just so important. Now, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be smart. That's not what this is saying. But everything being equal, your attitude is really, really important. So you got to figure out in a world that's very competitive and can be very cold in a lot of ways, is how you're going to keep yourself positive. I'll tell you what I did. When I started the business, now just think about baseball players. We're in the World Series. What's the best batting average today? Does any of the guys know? Actually, some of the girls may know here. You know what the best batting average is this year? Anybody know? Probably a little high, but lesson learned here. I'm telling you that as you start thinking about getting out in the world, you better know this kind of stuff. You think, well, what do I need to know about baseball stuff? Well, guess what? There's going to be a lot of people that you may want to do business with that you need to know, talk with people about things. You may think that's foolish, but just think about how are you going to carry a conversation with somebody you've never met before? How are you going to do that? You're going to tell them about yourself? That's not going to work. That's right. It's all about them. I think about a few things. When I get in conversation with people, I think of a few things. And I think, number one, I picture in my mind their house. Where do they live? Where are they from? I think about that. And I can always get in a conversation with them about that. Think about the driveway and the car that's sitting there. Do they have children? There's children playing in there. And it's like, okay, I ask them about their children. And I picture a house that has a chimney, and then on that chimney there's a glove. And that glove for me symbolizes that, what do they do for a living? What do they do for work? And that glove is holding an airplane. That sounds really strange how I remember things, but that's how when I was young, I remembered, okay, what I need to talk to them about. And that airplane simplifies, where do you travel? What do you do with your hobbies, and what do you do with your free time? And that's how you start having conversations. Guys that are here today, if you don't know how to talk to a girl, it works. Right? You start talking to them about those things and ask questions, and you can have a conversation, and then you listen. But you got to be able to talk back to them of things that they say. And so if they're interested in the symphony, or they're interested in baseball or athletics or the world and politics and things, you got to be able to talk to them about those kinds of things. And you'll sound really intelligent, but it's all just asking questions. So it's very easy when you're a student to think, well, I got some time ahead. But you got to start thinking now about learning about the world and what's outside of what we used to call Provo. You know, they say the world is our campus. Well, when you're at school, campus is your world, right? That's everything revolves around school. But when I was young and starting in the business, I tell you what I did was I read a lot of books. You know, things that kept your attitude positive, because coming back to the baseball analogy, even if the best person was 400, and I think probably the batting averages are probably in the low 300 by the end of the season, just think of that. Out of 10 pitches, a batter is going to strike out 7 times. Just think how negative that is. I mean, the negative reinforcement that is. That when you get up to the base, you know, there's a 7 out of 10 times chance that you're going to strike out, or you're not going to get on base. Only 3 times of 300, 3 out of 10 times will you hit the ball and get on base. Now, in my world, guess what the average was? You know, out of 200 times up at bats, maybe I get 3 appointments. Now think about that statistic, how negative that can be in the reinforcement. And while you're going into my business or anything else, there's a lot of negative things. So you got to figure out how you're going to do it. Now, some of that, since we're at BYU, I would tell you, you should be listening to the conference talks. I would tell you I was listening, my car has, I can listen to, I have conference, right, with an iPhone. So if you have it, now maybe you can't afford it, whatever, right now, but someday you will. But I can go to Mormon radio or Mormon.org, and I listened to Elder Wookdorf this morning. He had an incredible talk this last conference about this whole positive attitude, mental attitude and things, and you need to listen to those kinds of things. It's not just conference. You got to listen to the words and fill your lives with positive reinforcement, because there's too much negative things in the world, and you got to read positive things. Because once your attitude goes down, you get defeated, then people give up. There's a reason why people in my industry make a lot of money. Number one, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of stress in what they do every day. You just look at what's going on in the world. But there's very few people who are willing to pay the price to get to where they want to do and to get to where they're at. A lot of people just give up along the way because it's too hard. So as I kind of started out, just remember the lemonade stand, that you're about to start the lemonade stand in life. When you graduated from BYU, Hawaii, you're going to be that lady sitting there at that lemonade stand at the bottom of the food chain. You may think you should be at the top, but trust me, the world will pay you what it thinks it's worth, and your experience and all that comes along. And you'll start somewheres at the bottom. But you got to have a vision of what it is you want to do, or whatever business, career, whatever it is. And then you have to have a plan, and then I would do it. Right? The world does you no good unless you figure it out and make mistakes along the way, and you will make lots of mistakes. And you'll have some failures, but that's okay. It's just you learn from all those experiences. Last thing, then we'll open up to some questions, hopefully you have, is with all the things that are going in the world, this may sound really, maybe the last thing you thought maybe I'd talk to you about, but I would tell you that most of the success that I've had in business, I would tell you I started out with nothing. My first tax return that I filed with my wife, we were at BYU, our taxable income was $2,500. I still have the tax return. And that didn't get any help from mom or dad, weren't wealthy parents. I paid for most of my school with that, and government help, Pell Grants, just all the stuff that some of you are doing. Right? Nobody helped me along the way. And I would tell you that's probably was a good thing. Because it made my wife and I fight along the way. And I'll tell something about my dad, not to, if you think you have it bad. My wife and I get married, we move into an apartment, and I call my dad and say, hey, Dad, we need a deposit. We had no credit, right? If you weren't a student, you don't have a credit card. And so the phone company says, well, you got to put a deposit down because they don't trust two young people who aren't making hardly anything. And they said, well, we need $75 to put down on the phone. So I called my dad, said, Dad, I don't have the money. It's like we're in school, kind of, struggling. And my dad said back to me, son, you're married. You got to figure that out yourself. I was really mad at my dad. It's like, come on, Dad, it's like $75, and you can't help out. But he was teaching me an important lesson. I worked, got the $75, put it down on the phone, and the rest is history. That's how we started. That gave me so much motivation that when I came from life with nothing, that I resolved in my mind that I knew I could work hard and I could achieve things, and I wanted a career that wouldn't hold me back and that I wouldn't be subject to all the other things I talked about earlier. And you can achieve it too. But it's not easy, and you got to have the motivation in your life and the reason to do it, and to fight through all the positive and the negative things along the way. So when you think about this last part and what's important to you, as I always have kept, and I always chose a career that would allow me to honor the things that I learned. I joined when I was a church when I was a junior in high school. First, I came to BYU. Not too long after that, had some great friends associated with it. I ended up going on a mission, came back, and then life continued on for me. And as I decided in my career and having served the mission that I would never take a job that would require me all the time to work on Sunday. Don't do it. I'd do something else. Now, there's sometimes you have to work on Sunday, but I'm just telling you that the foundation of your life, when everything else fails, the church is there, your foundation, you just got to trust the leaders on this, young people, that you have prophets, seers, and revelators that were telling you what you need to do. And life gets really challenging. If you think, well, life's hard, I got to study, and it's a lot of stuff. Trust me. These older folks that are sitting here in the front, they will tell you, life doesn't get any easier. It gets more challenging. You get more responsibility, but you learn how to deal with it as you get older. And you don't worry about things probably as much. But the gospel is at the center of it that will keep you from falling apart in the middle of the toughest things. Had a major lawsuit last year, somebody that we had to let go and we got sued. They were suing us for a couple hundred million dollars. If you've never sat in an arbitration in a court of law, which I've had to do a couple of times now as you run a business, you're getting sued all the time these days. A lot of stress, and if I had lost that, of course, a lot of money would have been lost for the firm and the business. In the midst of that, though, you need something that's going to keep you grounded and focused on what's really important in life. Because when you're talking about a couple $100 million and potentially losing that firm's capital, that's not going to end well for me, right, if that happens, at least for a career standpoint. But in the middle of that, what keeps you going and focused on working through it is the gospel and the foundation it brings in your life. The other thing I would tell you at the end of the day, you may like your friends, especially here at BYU. In fact, I told my oldest son that high school, it's like he said, well, all my high school friends will always be my friends, just trust me. Look, when you go off to college, your college friends will be your better friends than your high school friends generally, because you get close to them and you're a little more mature, and he now realizes that's true. But in the end, when things are really bad and life gets challenging, it's your family that's there, your husband, your wife, your children, right? They're the ones at the end of the day that will be there for you. Your friends and everybody else is not when it comes down to it. So you got to take care of those things to get through life. All right, so let me just stop there and see what questions do you have about, just as you're thinking about going into the job world, about the financial world, about any things that may be in your mind. I hope you won't be shy and you'll raise some questions. I truly mean that, whatever is on your mind, if you want to ask it, I'm willing to share just my experiences. I'll just share one last thing, kind of where I'm at today. I forgot to mention this is not to boast at all, but just as I mentioned, starting from nothing, my goal of managing $100 million today, starting at little BYU, Hawaii in 1978. Today, I run a company that has about $8 billion under management. Generates about $50 million in revenue every year. Big responsibility, a lot of money, a lot of responsibility. It all started here. So you can choose to be whatever you want, and at the top of your careers, it doesn't matter where you're starting. Right? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and it just matters how you run the race along the way and how you do it. So with that, let me just ask, see if there are any questions that any of you may have. Yes? So the question was, do we recruit here on campus, and are we hiring? We are hiring. We're always looking for people, and we've had some people do internships, from BYU Hawaii. We've had a couple people from PROA we've hired. We haven't had anybody from BYU Hawaii. I think they're fairly new in your finance, degrees, here, but that's certainly a possibility. Let me just tell you, when you're looking for a job, what do we look for? What are employers going to look for? Well, there's a couple things that I think you got to think about. We're always looking for success. It doesn't matter if it's my industry or any other industry. They're looking for people that have a pattern of success in their life. You may think, well, I'm getting straight A's, or I don't know what your grade point averages are, but we're always looking for people who maybe they did well in school, but what other things are you involved in? Are you involved in a club? Are you the president of the club? Are you working as you're going through school and taking care of, are you doing that on your own? If you're involved in any extracurricular activities, how did you do in it? Were you average? Did you just participate in it? Or, why would I hire you over the next person, right? Is there something that differentiates you from the next person that I'm going to talk to that demonstrates that you have a pattern of success and that you've achieved different things in your life, because it's a competitive world. Keep in mind, again, everybody, we're not just competing here in Hawaii. We're competing with people around the globe, around the world now, and so you got to compete in that world. And so for those of you who you're still kind of thinking about sharpening up that resume. Someday you're going to hand an employer a resume. And what's it going to say on there about your success or the lack thereof as you're thinking about trying to get a good job somewhere? And so we're always looking for people that whatever it is they've done, it doesn't matter if it's in the finance industry or whatever, I'm looking for people who, and yes, if somebody from BYU Hawaii came in and was looking for a job, if they had those things, we'd hire them. What else? What other questions do you have? Yes? Do I enjoy what I do? I'll put it this way, the wonderful thing that I get to do is I get to help people accomplish their hopes and their dreams. Now, my role's changed a little bit now, so I'm not an advisor anymore. I manage about 80 financial advisors that work for me and about 25 other people that support them. But what I get to do now is to teach other people how to do it really well, and I really, really enjoy that. In the 25, what you find in this career is you start out with somebody who's 50 years old, and now, maybe they're 20 years later, they're now retired, and they've passed away, and they have children, and you've helped those individuals not only to grow and protect their wealth, but you made sure that the wealth got to where it was supposed to, because we're going through a situation now where people haven't taken care of that. And I would tell you, family's great, blood, is really great, but guess what happens when money gets involved? It gets really ugly, right? People fight, and brothers and sisters no longer talk to each other, and it's because they haven't had things done properly. And so we get the people to live out their dreams and whatever they want to do, but we help them accomplish that. If they want to travel, or they want to start a second business, or maybe they've worked their life and they want to be entrepreneurial and they want to start a business, we figure out how to get them there and what they need to get there, and help them achieve those things. So I'm just telling you, in my mind, there's not a better career, there's not a better profession in all the world. Difference between us and doctors is if we make a mistake, though, our patients don't die, right? They're still alive. And you will make mistakes. But you establish some, you have some incredible relationships along the way. In a career in this industry, you'll see, I've been places and done things that when I was on a farm many, many years ago and struggling along that I never thought I would ever do. Talk to people I never thought I would talk to. Learn about the world and things that I never thought I would. So it's an incredible career. It's one that's constantly changing, which again, if you're in the entrepreneurial or whether it's this industry or not, you gotta kind of embrace that. Again, if you like the regular production assembly type of job, that's fine, right? It's a little different. That's not for me. But every day is different. You never know who's going to do something in the world today that's going to upset the financial markets, and you don't know what Europe is going to do right now. If you're reading kind of what's going on in the world, there's a major crisis going on, right, in the financial markets overseas that impacts us here, and the challenges that it meets for the people that you work with. Well, I kind of like that, right? It's always challenging. It's always something new. You never get stale, never gets old. So. So the question is the world is you're young and you're 23 years old, and granted, it's harder today to get started than probably was when I was, so it's just different. And what do you do along the way? Well, there's several ways to come in the industry. If this is an industry you're thinking about, you can start at working in some banks. You can work, the Schwabs and Fidelities of the world, that you can get some experience, so that, as you're out talking to people, you have some knowledge and experience. But the best advice I can tell you is if you're young but if you have a good demonstration of success, you can always work with another senior person in the market. So what I try to do when people come in, I'll take somebody and I'll have them mentored by a senior financial advisor. Their role is to go out and talk to people and build relationships, but that senior advisor is going to manage the money for them, and then eventually, when you look 5, 6 years, 7 years down the road, they'll learn more and more about how to manage money. But you can get into the business and be successful if you look, to work with a senior financial advisor. So, but there's different ways to gain experience, and some people, like I said, they'll start out and work with, in an industry, they'll work at a bank, but when you work with a major firm like Merrill Lynch, we not only just deal with their investments, we deal with complex trust, and we deal with currencies, we deal with hedge funds, and we deal with a lot of things to hedge people's money that protects their wealth. So most of the people that we work with, they have wealth, and they're just trying not to lose it. And it's very easy to lose it in the world. And many of them, as they get to retirement age, there's no going back. Right? They can't replace it. So we're trying to figure out, with all the things that we have at our disposal, how do we protect that wealth and then let it grow throughout the retirement years so they don't have to go back to work. Any other questions? Other questions about careers and things? If I could start over again, what would I change? It would come back to, I would obviously be in the history. Look, here's the thing you need to realize is there's $17 trillion of wealth that's translating from one generation, or from the baby boomers, as they exit the workforce into, that's got to come out of those pension plans. $17 trillion. It's a lot of money over the next 10 to 15 years, and they need to talk to somebody. And I think the world's going to be a little more difficult. There's more regulation. I think there's going to be fewer financial advisors. There's going to be fewer firms because the bigger firms will succeed and the smaller ones won't be able to stand or survive in the world that's ahead. But if I were starting over again, I'd focus on, again, as I talked about this doctor, is the more narrow, the more focused you are on what it is you want, the more successful you will be at it. That's what it is. You look at great athletes, they're not trying to be everything. You look at Tiger Woods, right? He changed the golf world when he came in. Now, you may not like Tiger Woods, and he did some bad things, but before Tiger came onto the scene, it was kind of old fat guys, right, that played golf, and it's like they weren't in shape and they didn't work out, but Tiger got on the scene. It's like he changed the world. These guys are athletes now, and they work out, and the strength and conditioning, you may not think so, but they are. And he's changed the world forever in the golf world. But laser focused on a couple things. So if I were in the business, I'd develop some markets or market segments. If I didn't know about them, you can develop them, right? You got the internet. It's amazing what's at your fingertips today. Amazing. You can research anything, just find out about anything today. And I'd find out what it is I like. And that's the thing I think about the industry is you got to work with people that you like. It's important for you when you start thinking about careers, and I tell my financial advisors when they're looking for clients is you want to figure people that you like, right? You want to work with people because it's a lot better to work with people you like than that you just don't get along with. So you get to choose that. And I would figure out what things do I like, what hobbies do I like. I like the golf, and I'm very involved in the arts community. I love, the Academy of Arts, and I'm very involved in that. Very involved in Young Men and the Boy Scouts of America. I get very involved in those things. I sit on the board of that. So I'd really kind of be laser focused. I'd find out my business. I'd figure out 4 markets. I'd know everything about them so that when I'm talking to those people in that segment, I'd know I'd be able to communicate with them and have a conversation with them because I'd be one of them. And you'll know that in your own associations, right? You look at people who you talk to as things that you have affiliation with. So you just got to expand that a little bit into whatever it is that you choose to do. Naturally drawn to the Academy of Arts. You know where it started. This is going to be really goofy when I tell you this. Is when I went to BYU. You all have to take general education classes. So here's for the professors on town. You can use this story. Is I had to take a humanities class. That was one of the classes. You had to know some electives. And I took a humanities class when I was somewhere early in my college career. And I really, really enjoyed the architecture and the art, and learning a lot about it was really, really cool. And then I realized that people that are in that have a lot of money. And I thought, wow, I can learn a lot about this, and I can deal with people that have a lot of money, and so we can have something that we both get along with, enjoy, and just learned a lot about art and music. I played trombone when I was in high school, and so I had some affinity there to music. And so I just had a natural tendency towards that. But whatever it is for you, right? That's what you want to learn. So looks like
Maybe one more question.
getting the hook here. So one more question. Okay, good.